What if I were to tell you that that is just a fraction of the most compelling evidence for the existence of Bigfoot? In the decades since the creature's first sighting, new videos and images, and even an FBI investigation have made it very difficult to deny that this mythical creature might not be a myth after all. The first ever footage captured of the Bigfoot was on such an archaic camera that experts have been stabilizing and enhancing the footage for half a century. In the meantime, technology has improved significantly, leading to better cameras in over 1 billion hands. So the Bigfoot debate should be over by now, but it's not, because too many fakes have flooded the internet, drowning the most compelling evidence of the Sasquatch. That's why I've sifted through hundreds of videos and pictures to find the most convincing ones that could prove the existence of Bigfoot. And perhaps the least debunkable of these are photos taken by a trail cam set up by hunter Rick Jacobs. Trail cams are cameras that can be mounted on trees to capture wildlife activity. This can help hunters understand the patterns of animal movement. Jacobs was looking for deer and watching out for bears, but what his camera picked up was something so strange that even the Associated Press ran a story on it. The picture, date-stamped September 16, 2007, shows a hairy creature on 2 feet. It seemed crouched over, and its muscle consistency looked closer to an ape than to a bear. The creature is too skinny to be a bear, and too tall to be any ape we know of. When the photo was first published, many people who were on the fence about Bigfoot became believers for a couple of reasons. Firstly, other photos taken by the same camera proved that what the camera had caught was definitely not a bear. Jacob's camera had captured photos of bear cubs, which looked unlike the suspected Sasquatch. Another reason was that experts could not definitively identify any known species it belonged to. The photo was taken somewhere in Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest, and Jacobs did not give specifics to keep amateur Bigfoot hunters away. The relevant game commission dismissed the creature as a bear, which was hard to buy for anyone who had seen a bear before. To this day, the Jacobs trail cam Bigfoot keeps the Sasquatch mystery alive. Another thing that points to the Bigfoot being more than a myth is the fact that the FBI literally investigated it. Now, why would the FBI investigate a creature that many would dismiss as made up? The answer is Peter Byrne, a man who has been chasing Bigfoot for 9 decades. According to recently declassified documents, Byrne had sent hair and tissue samples to the agency. Byrne had been looking for Bigfoot since he was a teen and continued looking for the creature up until he died at the age of 97. Had Byrne been looking for fame, he could have lied and staged a Sasquatch photo. But the man was honest enough to admit that he had not come face to face with the creature. That made everything else he said far more credible. Among his claims was encountering a huge footprint in the Pacific Northwest. In 1976, there were 2 Bigfoot sightings pretty close to each other on Mount Hood. There were multiple eyewitnesses, and Byrne contacted 2 of them immediately. After a long hike, Byrne and the witnesses reached the location of the incident. There, Byrne found 14-inch humanoid footprints. Had he been after fame, he could have easily taken photos and gone on a publicity run claiming to have personally seen the Sasquatch. But instead, Byrne started looking for testable evidence. He found hair and tissue snagged on the tree where the creature seemed to have walked. Byrne bagged the samples and put them in a sealed plastic bag. After that, he started looking for labs that could analyze the samples for him, but none could help him. Eventually, he turned to the FBI, which was quite risky. For starters, the FBI wasn't known for testing random samples that weren't connected to an open investigation. More importantly, there was a real chance that Byrne's samples could be thrown in the trash. Peter Byrne would be giving over the only evidence he had of the Bigfoot to an agency that might never give it back. So to be safe, Byrne first sent a letter to the Bureau asking if they would be willing to test the samples. A staff member replied asking Byrne to send over the strands and the tissue to the FBI lab. After Byrne sent the samples, he did not hear from the FBI for 43 years. It wasn't until 2019 that we got to see declassified Bigfoot documents, which contained a letter from the assistant director of the FBI. It turned out that the FBI had taken Byrne's request seriously and made an exception to its testing policies to test the samples he had sent. But Byrne was disappointed by the results. In what is labeled by Bigfoot believers as the cover-up of the century, the FBI claimed that the samples he had sent belonged to the deer family. Why was this information not communicated to Byrne immediately? More importantly, why did the Bureau even entertain the samples? Usually, the FBI tests samples connected to open investigations only. Was the Bureau looking for Bigfoot? Or did they simply want to silence one of the most prominent Sasquatch seekers by taking evidence off his hands? Whether you believe the FBI's test results or not depends on how much you trust the government. Byrne continued to look for the Sasquatch up until last year when he died at the age of 97. At one point, his research team took a photograph of a 14.5-inch footprint in the Six Rivers National Forest in Northern California. This would become one of the earliest instances of footprints being used as evidence for the Sasquatch's existence. But when it comes to footprint-based evidence, one of the most compelling pieces comes from the Blue Mountains of Oregon, where locals had reported seeing large footprints. Jeff Meldrum, a professor of anatomy and anthropology, decided to check out the prints for himself. He was a hardened skeptic, motivated to disprove the creature's existence. But when he spotted a trail of tracks in the Blue Mountains, he had a sinking feeling in his stomach. As an expert in foot morphology, Meldrum knew that what he was looking at weren't manufactured tracks. The gap between the prints was stable enough, as was signs of motion. Meldrum made a plaster cast of the prints to study them. Soon after, Meldrum would become a Bigfoot believer. The Blue Mountain Bigfoot has attracted and converted more academics than pretty much any other piece of evidence. But why? Because the print is in line with an actual foot in motion. The toes are elongated instead of stamped in, and the prints align perfectly with the specifics of primate foot motion. Professor Meldrum, who has written a book and multiple papers on primate locomotion, would be able to tell if large footprints were faked. It is kind of poetic that prints of big feet made him believe in a creature called Bigfoot. And if you've ever wondered how the creature got its name, you'd have to go back to August 1958, when the Humboldt Times of Eureka, California, first used the term Bigfoot to describe a creature who had left behind large footprints discovered by a man named Jerry Crew. Crew had made a plaster cast out of the footprint and posed with it for the newspaper's photographer. Though to be fair, the print turned out to be a fake, planted by a man named Ray Wallace, who used a giant foot made out of wood to stamp the prints into the dirt. Wallace used the bed of his truck to push down the prints without leaving human footprints alongside the stamped ones. Wallace took the secret to his grave, only telling his family about it. After he died at the age of 84, his family came clean about their dad's lifelong prank. But that doesn't stop the stories. It's like the story of the boy who cried wolf at first, until later the wolf actually came by, but by then no one believed him. In an interesting twist, Wallace's prank has become the basis of proving Bigfoot's existence. Because when plaster casts from stamped prints are placed next to the ones cast by Professor Meldrum in the Blue Mountains, experts can study the difference. Even the general public can tell that one is clearly pushed in to create an impression while the other looks more natural. Sasquatch footprints have been seen all over the US. In 1980, locals in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, reported strange noises and a weird smell alongside a massive 17.75-inch footprint. Associated Press ran the story with a photograph of the print. But because footprints are easy to hoax and the first ever to be documented was proven to be fake, skeptics don't take them seriously. So even though the Meldrum foot has convinced academics and baffled experts, it isn't given as much credit as the Patterson-Gimlin film, which has been around for more than 50 years and is yet to be debunked. The film, made by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, is considered the first instance of the creature being caught on camera. The duo went deep into the woods in Northern California, where Bigfoot sightings had been reported. Patterson was filming, while Gimlin, the cowboy, seemed to be the main subject. Then, the two noticed an ape-like figure, and a startled Patterson tried to stabilize the camera. Getting the camera in position, he captured a few frames of the supposed Sasquatch. In an iconic frame, the Sasquatch turns around and looks at Patterson and his camera. The act of looking back is seen as a sign of intelligence. If Bigfoot were just another ape, the creature would not be fascinating, but the idea of a humanoid ape-like creature that is smart enough to stare at humans as he walks away is interesting. The turn back is also crucial, as it reveals the Sasquatch anatomy, which is pretty consistent with the ape family. Skeptics have tried to dismiss the entire thing by calling the creature a man in a costume. But many special effects artists and designers have dismissed this, stating that such an advanced costume would be impossible to manufacture in 1967. For context, here is an ape costume in a Hollywood production that came out the next year. The apes in the 1968 Planet of the Apes show the peak of Hollywood costume design, and it is nowhere close to the Patterson-Gimlin film, where the creature has a kind of thickness natural to larger apes. Even the movements of the Sasquatch in the Patterson-Gimlin film are far more fluid than people in costumes. This is best illustrated by comparing stabilized footage of the Patterson-Gimlin film with a scene from the 1968 Planet of the Apes. The comparison shows why the Bigfoot footage from 1967 is still relevant even though we have better cameras today. Because we can make better costumes today, so even the most realistic-looking Sasquatch could just be a man in a costume. But the same cannot be said about the Sasquatch taped by Patterson and Gimlin. Another thing that proves that the Patterson-Gimlin tape is legitimate is the fact that Gimlin never debunked the encounter. He turned down interview requests not only because his wife objected to its publicity, but also because Patterson and the film's promoter broke their agreement to pay Gimlin a 1/3 share of any profits the film generated. In fact, Patterson hired another person to play the role of Bob Gimlin on the publicity tour, probably because he was cheaper than Gimlin. At that point, Gimlin got upset with Patterson and the two stopped speaking. The disgruntled cowboy had nothing to gain from lying or keeping up the hoax. He didn't want fame, and he wasn't getting any money. Yet he maintains to this day that the creature he saw was real. As for his relationship with Patterson, it was repaired on Patterson's deathbed. Gimlin received a call from his former partner's brother saying that Patterson was asking for him. Gimlin went to see Patterson, who apologized. In Gimlin's own words, "Bob," he said, "I apologize." He said, "Bob, I've got the money, and the means, and the equipment." He said, "As quick as I get well, you and I are gonna go down to California and capture a Bigfoot." That was in the afternoon. That evening, Patterson, the first man to film the Bigfoot, died. But he left behind a legacy and a craze to capture the Sasquatch on camera. The Patterson-Gimlin film was criticized by modern critics for being too grainy. Skeptics would say that a daytime sighting caught on a modern camera would definitely end the Bigfoot debate, but most modern videos were shot at night. Until a video titled "The Independence Day" was uploaded online. The film, shot on the 4th of July, featured an adult Bigfoot with a baby Bigfoot. After disappearing behind the boulder, the adult Sasquatch stands up with a baby in its arms and then vanishes behind the bushes. A closer look at the footage reveals multiple similarities with the Sasquatch featured in the Patterson-Gimlin film. The suit isn't saggy, and the creature moves with a higher knee thrust than most humans. The paternal affection it shows towards its young seems very genuine, and getting a well-fitting Sasquatch costume for a child would be just as hard as getting a convincing costume for an adult in Roger Patterson's time. One of the best arguments in favor of the footage being real is that no one has tried to gain money or fame out of it. Those who uploaded it are unknown, and even the place where it was filmed has never been released. But despite the creature's realistic movement and a lack of a comparable suit, skeptics have found another reason to dismiss it. The person filming the video seems too comfortable. In a real encounter, the person filming the creature would be scared. By that standard, the most compelling Bigfoot video is that of the Provo Canyon Bigfoot. In October of 2012, a group of siblings noticed what they thought was a bear. They kept zooming in from a distance without getting too close. At one point, one of the kids asks if the other thinks it's a bear. Then the creature stands up abruptly, freaking out the kids who seem genuinely scared throughout the rest of the video. The Provo Canyon Bigfoot is considered by far the most convincing one to be captured on camera, not just because of the genuine reaction of those filming it, but also because the same creature was caught a second time by another hiker. Just a few weeks after the first sighting, a hiker was walking through the Utah hills near Provo Canyon when he noticed a large animal. But when the creature stood up, the hiker realized that it was no ordinary animal. Fascinated and freaking out, he took out his phone and started filming. After standing behind a tree for a moment, the Bigfoot started throwing rocks at him. It is worth noting that the rock-throwing behavior has been mentioned in countless accounts of Bigfoot encounters. But the second video of the Provo Canyon Bigfoot would be the first ever to document it. Once again, the man filming the video did not seek any publicity from the encounter. Another man who did not try to monetize his Bigfoot sighting is Josh Highcliffe, who witnessed the hairy creature in Mississippi. He filmed the ape-like creature for a while, but when it moved, he panicked and hit the wrong button, which stopped the recording. Noticing that the device was no longer filming, he hit record again to capture a terrifying moment in which the creature stands up to reveal its true height. Highcliffe ran as fast as he could. He went on to upload the video to YouTube, where it garnered over 1.3 million views. Highcliffe did not upload any more videos to the platform, once again undercutting the self-promotion angle. Highcliffe speculated that the creature was a skunk ape, which is considered the southern cousin of the Sasquatch. When it comes to the most compelling evidence for Bigfoot's existence, Provo Canyon Bigfoot and the Josh Highcliffe humanoid ape seem to be tied. Let me know in the comments which one you think is more convincing. Personally, I'm more fascinated by the Jeff Meldrum foot, as it is the hardest one to debunk. There are plenty of theories that can explain all of this. For starters, Bigfoot could very well be an unidentified species. Huge apes have walked the earth before us. Take the example of Gigantopithecus, which was a 9.8-foot-tall ape that weighed up to 661 pounds. Here is the replica of the Gigantopithecus at San Diego's Museum of Man. If you saw that today, what would you call it? Bigfoot, of course. Since these creatures coexisted with early humans, it is likely that the stories of these creatures have survived longer than the animals themselves. That explanation would please the skeptics, but wouldn't explain all the video footage and the footprints. Sasquatch believers might say that the Gigantopithecus still lives among us, but experts say that they have gone extinct. It's worth remembering that experts have mistakenly declared dozens of species as extinct and have been proven wrong before. From the Laotian rock rat to a species of 200-foot redwoods, you can find plenty of examples of species that were thought to be extinct only to be found surviving and thriving among us. Gigantopithecus has been declared to be extinct for over 100,000 years, but the dawn redwood was declared to be extinct for 65 million years, yet it was found in China. Another question is, why are Bigfoot sightings so rare? Why is it that even as smartphones have reached billions of hands, the Bigfoot sightings caught on camera are in double digits? Two theories can explain this. Firstly, the Sasquatch doesn't want to be seen. How often have you seen a monkey in the wild? Animal sightings are generally rare because most people don't venture out into the woods. Secondly, most people are not actively looking for Bigfoot. Even zoologists have dismissed the hypothesis and stopped searching. In that context, when you look at a frame from one of the videos we have covered, you can see how the Sasquatch would be easy to miss. There are 3 dark spots behind those trees, and only one of them is the supposed Sasquatch. Interestingly enough, the biggest spot towards the left isn't the creature. Bigfoot is the one in the middle. Had the creature not stood on its hind legs, no one would be able to identify it as Bigfoot. As long as the Sasquatch keeps walking on all fours, it might as well visit Times Square and not get noticed. Most people would simply see a gorilla. A far more terrifying theory is that thousands of people see the Sasquatch but do not live to tell the tale. Every year, over 500,000 people go missing in the US alone. So it's possible for hundreds of thousands of people to have seen and even recorded videos of the Sasquatch, but perhaps they got too close. Of course, the criticism for this is that you could easily say the same thing about the tooth fairy. Critics would say that instead of explaining why there isn't evidence for a specific creature, we must only focus on the evidence that is available. And the evidence may be hard to debunk, but it is very easy to dismiss. Let's start with the most obvious one, which is the trail cam Sasquatch. What looks like a baby Bigfoot doing yoga could very well be a bear with a serious case of mange. Then there is the footprint cast by Jeff Meldrum. But then again, Shaq's foot is an inch longer than Meldrum's supposed Bigfoot footprint. Pristine Auction posted a photo that shows how big Shaq's shoe actually is when they put a signed pair up for auction. That alone would disqualify most footprint evidence, as it could be a very large man. That leaves behind a small collection of videos, from the Patterson-Gimlin film to the Provo Canyon Sasquatch clips. Critics would say that each one of those shows a man in a gorilla costume. Take the Patterson-Gimlin film as an example. The greatest argument in favor of the film is that an out-of-work Patterson wouldn't be able to get a better costume than big-budget Hollywood productions. And critics would say that while it is unlikely for the guy to get the costume, it is even more unlikely for a Sasquatch to exist and go undetected by zoologists for 5 decades. But they're wrong. Those critics might not know that mountain gorillas were considered to be mythical creatures until the 1900s. Up until the 1800s, all gorillas were considered mythical and made up. One of the first descriptions of these animals came from a British explorer in the 1600s, who called them monsters covered in hair except for the face and hands, which slept in trees and fed on fruit. He described them as most similar to a man, but with the stature of a giant. Today, a description like that would put you squarely in the ranks of a Bigfoot believer. Giant pandas are yet another species that remained hidden until the 20th century. It took 50 years since the first panda bear sighting for the animal to be accepted by science. Scientists discover nearly 18,000 new species every year, though most of them are small and microscopic. But since zoologists have missed giant animals before, one cannot rule out the possibility of there being a bipedal ape that avoids detection and continues to show up only when the cameraman is too far away or has an ancient, low-quality camera. I am open to the Sasquatch's existence, but believe that even the most compelling evidence falls short of proving it. What I found most interesting in researching this video was that a lot of animals like gorillas and pandas were once considered myths and legends. What's to say Bigfoot isn't just another undiscovered fact or species? The absence of evidence isn't the evidence of absence. Another mythical being that people have reported seeing is the Nephilim giants, believed to live in the caves of the Solomon Islands. But it turns out it's no longer looking like a myth. In Such, we did a whole video on it, and you should check it out.